Gibson here, another episode of Meaningful Live. I've sat here exactly in this chair almost 2 years ago, the night of Simchat Torah, 2023. Sadly and tragically commenting on the atrocities, barbaric atrocities that happened on that very day, Shmini Atzeret Simchat Torah 2 years ago. And here I am, just a few days before that anniversary, that sad anniversary, speaking to you from exactly the same place in Redondo Beach, California, the sukkah of my children, and where I've been spending time to celebrate. And here we are, 2 years later. So many mixed feelings. On one hand, all of us celebrate the imminent release of the last 20 living hostages that were ripped away from their families, from their homes, from their comfort zones, while their brothers and sisters were massacred in the most barbaric fashion, ripped away with the other over 220 and some hostages. So we celebrate. Every life is precious. Every life is a universe. 2 years of hell. I don't even know how they're going to rebuild their lives. But we have that deeper resilience, and I'm sure they will. So we celebrate with them and their families as the promises that they will be returned today, tomorrow, literally 2 years later. And as such, there are no words of, I look at it like it's my own family. I think we all should see it that way. And there are no words that are sufficient to describe the joy and celebration of being able to be firstly freed from that abyss, but be reunited with family. And from here on, they and their families should only have good news to report, only simchas, only celebrations. And may God comfort those families that have lost members who were killed as hostages, and those that were killed in the IDF, and those that are sacrificing their lives right now. Our prayers go out to them. So on one hand, there's no question it's joy. We're in the holiday, the Jewish holiday of Sukkot, a time of joy, and quickly approaching Shmini Atzeret Simchas Torah, which is the Hebrew date for October 7th, 2 years ago. The most celebrated, the most happy holiday, the most happy days of the year. So we clearly have something to celebrate about. But as you probably share with me, there are mixed feelings. What happens next? And yes, we're getting 20 lives that deserve to be freed, that deserve to be reunited with their families. But at what price? 1,000 terrorists are being returned. I'm not minimizing. I'm not one that is going to make that decision, whether it's worth it or not, because every life is sacred. And at this point, this is what we need to do. But what happens next? Is this an incentive for future hostage taking? God forbid, I don't even want to mention it. And have we eliminated the enemy? So our prayers and our hopes and fervent hopes is that this will be the end of the nightmare in the fullest sense of the word, and Gaza can be rebuilt. And may the innocent people, whoever they may be in Gaza, also begin to thrive, not under the threat of their own terrorist brothers and sisters that keeping them also hostage. But that's another discussion about exactly their complicity or lack of complicity or silence, or did they empower and enable? So there's plenty to come. And in general, when you talk about freeing hostages, it's always been a question when Jews were taken hostage over the centuries. It was always a question whether the ransom was too high, whether it would be an incentive for future hostage taking. So this is not necessarily the time to discuss that, because, as I said, we celebrate their freedom. But wise people, prudent people have to think about what's next. What is the ultimate solution? What is the ultimate long-term solution to this issue? So I've said here many times that the bottom line is the real battle is not just on the battlefield. Obviously, you have to fight those battles. The real battle is in the education system. As long as children are being taught hatred and taught violence, whatever their justification, quote unquote, is, you have a problem, because there'll always be the next generation. Call it Hamas, call it Hezbollah, call it new names that have never been given before. So what you really need is a true revolution in the education of that entire region. An education that teaches that you can disagree with someone and you don't have to hate them. You can disagree with someone, you don't have to kill them, let alone kill them the way they were killed. So this is what the real long-term solution is. Short-term, you have to. All peace comes from strength. Unfortunately, we learned the hard way at the end of World War II that it was only unconditional surrender of the Axis, which means the Nazis in Germany and the Japanese in Japan. The only way was unconditional surrender. Why? Why not let them save face? Let them have some pride? Because it began a war that caused the death of tens of millions of people. And now the only way to resolve it, that there's a clear winner and a clear loser. One of the things that bothers me tremendously is that you have people who've perpetrated a crime, started a war 2 years ago, and they're dictating terms. Who are they to dictate terms? What you want is unconditional surrender. And you see today that the fact is Germany and Japan are allies of the West. They're allies of Israel. They're allies of America. It was specifically because they were completely lost and they understood that they were the losers and the terms are defined by the winners. That's not a bad thing when you're dealing with real good and evil. And then you rebuild them. And look, today they have their pride and their dignity, and they acknowledge the crimes of the past. This is the same thing will have to happen to Muslim Arab world. It's as simple as that. And as long as we keep that quiet out of political correctness or nobody wants to rock the boat, we'll have the same problem, God forbid. So what we should learn from this, that never happen again, and is by understanding exactly that. The winner dictates the terms. It has to be civil terms, decent terms. Allow all innocent people to make choices, and those that are not should be prosecuted, just like Nazi war crimes, just like the Nuremberg trials. So together with the celebration and joy of the hostage release, and hopefully the end of this war, there has to be now a reckoning on all sides of what is right and what is wrong, and give people opportunity to rebuild. That's the only way you can redeem these tragic events. Unfortunately, in the past, very often wars have been fought and won, but then it was the victory was ultimately scrounged, was ultimately undermined by having an attitude of trying to be ambiguous or trying to be fair on both sides. No, as I said, unconditional surrender. And then, of course, there are those parties that we still remain in the shadows, in the background, whether it's Qatar, whether it's others who want to dance what they call both weddings, want to have eat the cake and eat them too. Everyone has to be exposed. Call a spade, and it's very simple. Just like the Abraham Accords called for peace between Israel and the Arab Muslim countries, let that extend. Let that extend to Qatar, let it extend to Saudi Arabia, to all the countries in that region, and there could be real change and a paradigm shift in that region. But you need to have bold people, decent people, but bold and firm and have no moral ambiguity. There's no room for that. There's a certain thing right and wrong. Now, this is not a blanket endorsement of everything Israel does. There are things Israel has done that actually have been part of the problem. I'm the first to acknowledge it. But when it comes to innocent lives, there are certain lines you don't cross. So I look at it in this holiday of joy, that on one hand we have much to celebrate, yes. Hopefully this is all over. But we also have to understand both the short-term and long-term challenges. Short-term, to create a environment, to create a communication that allows for the diffusion of hostilities, that eliminates the enemy and the threats of the enemy, and allows for good people to sit down and figure out what they need to do to create a lasting peace. Long term, as I said, education is a big one in my mind, the education of the next generation, but also the acceptance. Remember, the Middle Ages The Middle Ages are marked, are scarred with a very aggressive Christian world, whether it was the Inquisition, whether it was the Crusaders who dominated and forced conversion upon others with the threat of death, not just the threat actually killing, was very aggressive. And today you find that the Christian world has created a country like the United States. It's not a Christian country per se, but it was Christians. People who came from, we'll call it the Roman Empire, ultimately, the Western world, and created a civil environment. They created a country, and then the democracies that followed, that respected the inalienable rights, human rights of every individual, that all men are created equal, and have inalienable rights, the rights of freedom, the freedom of religion, the freedom of expression, freedom of press. So that happened in a very aggressive Christian world. Monarchies were overthrown. We have a very different world. It's still far from perfect. I firmly believe that the Muslim world will go through such a paradigm shift, a market correction, if you wish. And now's the time. It happens usually after a lot of pain. Just like post-World War II, there was a renaissance, and we had not had to fight wars like that. It's almost 100 years later. Not quite. It's 80 years later. It's because, again, lessons were learned. And lessons have to be learned. The Middle East has been fraught with battles that go back from the beginning of history, from biblical times. But the promise is also that at the end of days, there will be peace and harmony without the annihilation of anyone, except, of course, that choose to live evil and to live a life of evil and violence. Then it's simply self-defense. And it's actually this holiday that's described in the prophecies as the holiday that will unite all nations. Harmony within diversity, a harmony that will allow everyone to be who they are under one God. To use the description from the Bible, that all nations will come to this house and see it as the house of prayer. What house is that? The house of the Lord, the Holy Temple. And here's another interesting thing. The Medrash says this. The Medrash is an oral, traditional discussion based on biblical verses, and the Medrash says the following: that the nations of the world would know the blessings they receive from the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, the blessings they receive from Israel, the blessings they receive from the Jewish people. Like Abraham was told, those that bless you shall be blessed. If the nations of the world consciously knew that, instead of attacking the Jews, instead of anti-Semitic attacks like the one in Manchester and Yom Kippur, they would surround the Holy Temple with legions and legions of their warriors to protect it because of the great blessings that come from there. So as a Jew, as a proud Jew, I'm here to say we are part of God's ambassadors to this world, to bring the world the message of peace, of love, of light for all nations of the world. Sinai changed the world for the best, brought all the values we cherish, but it's values that we all should share, universal values. And we should be proud and celebrate what the Jewish people have brought to the world. You may remember the best-selling book called The Gift of the Jews by Thomas Cahill, where he describes, I believe, 30 key words, concepts, that were brought to the world by the Jewish people. Those included, if I recall correctly, destiny, providence, words like optimism, hope, faith, words that shape our realities today. The world does not know that. There's so many people brainwashed, and they see Jews as the enemy. And when you ask them why, they don't really have a reason. A lot of cultural brainwashing, generational. So that's also part of the issue, that we should be proud of this. Not about concealing or hiding. We should be celebrating the Jewish people who are witnesses to history and have been here and survived all those empires, whether it's the Egyptian Empire, whether it's the Persian Empire, the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, the Ottoman, the Byzantine, in whatever order you want, the Spanish Empire. And we're here, standing, and still value those, and still cherish and still celebrate those values. That's what we need to be celebrating. And the world needs to be celebrating that. So in that sense, let me conclude these few words. 2 years from Simchas Torah, 2023. 2 years from what is known as October 7th, which was a few days ago. But that year, 2 years ago, it came out on Simchat Torah. A day when we celebrate the indestructibility of God, the indestructibility of God's chosen people, the indestructibility of all human beings that God created in the divine image, and that when we uphold our values upon the foundations, the eternal foundations, the divine eternal foundations, then we know that all men are created equal, created, and the Creator has endowed us with inalienable rights. Then you know it's inalienable. You know it's permanent, it's eternal, and it's forever and ever. God bless you. God bless you all. God bless the families of the hostages. May they finally be released in an unscathed way as best as possible. And may going forward join together and partner in creating a better world. And each of us can do that in our own personal lives, in microcosm, making peace with our friends, with our neighbors, with strangers, with co-workers, with family members, and internally discovering the divine message and the divine image that lies embedded in each one of us. Be blessed and be well, and may we only have joyous, revealed joy going forward. This has been Simon Jacobson. MeaningfulLife.com is our website. Please go there. It has a wide array of resources and materials. And please subscribe to our offering, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and please share this if you feel this message is meaningful. So I sit here again in the Sukkah in Redondo Beach, California, blessing you all, wishing you all the best, and I'd love to hear your feedback, thoughts, and comments. May we only celebrate together good news. Be well and be blessed.